they come from different perspectives, backgrounds, and disciplines. So I think this is really going to spark some lively debate on the topic and provide you with plenty of food for thought. As Clarissa said, as we work our way through the discussion, please submit any questions to the chat, and these are going to be monitored and we'll come to them at the end of the session. Joining us this evening, we have Josep Pinyol. Josep recently completed his PhD at the University of Exeter Business School with a thesis entitled "Why Do Non-Transformative Ideas Become Policies?" And he is currently working as a consultant specialising in circular economy and European policy at Ramboll in Brussels. We have Lise Suarez-Visbal, an Ashoka Fellow and doctoral researcher at Utrecht University. She has more than 18 years of professional experience in several countries, including the Netherlands, Spain, India, Canada, the US, Thailand, Mali, and Colombia, as an NGO director and an advocate of social impact with a gender lens. And we also have Cristina Fedato joining us. Cristina has been the head of the Sustainable Infrastructure Products and Services team at the Collaborating Centre on Sustainable Consumption and Production since 2016. She has over 20 years of experience in fields combining corporate sustainability and social responsibility, sustainable procurement, sustainable supply chains, and circular economy. You can find more information about each of our speakers in the event webpage. And in a few moments, they're each going to tell us a bit more about themselves and their work around circular economy. But before we do that, just to kick things off, we would like you to respond to a short poll, which Clarisse is going to share with you now. And we would like to ask you the question, what words come to mind when you think of circular economy?
So if you don't know how it works, you can see there's use code at the top of the screen. So just go to menti.com and then put out this code and it will direct you to this poll so you can vote and we'll see the results.
So hopefully we'll start to see some results coming in. Before we start talking about what we mean by circular economy, it'd be really great to find out what you all think about when you think of circular economy and what does it mean to you. Okay, so we have sustainable waste, resources. Collaboration, that's an interesting one. I'm sure that's something that will come up in the discussion later as well. Reusing, recycling, reducing. We'll wait a few more moments and see if we get any more. Quite familiar terms probably when we think about sustainability. These types of ideas come up quite often. The idea of reusing, recycling, thinking about waste. And of course, sustainable. I think Clarisse has posted a link in the chat if any of you haven't had chance to add yet. I think what we can do is we'll move on and we'll keep monitoring this. If any of you haven't had chance yet and you want to keep adding your responses, please do so. What we would like to do before we start the discussion is for each of our speakers to say a bit more about themselves and their background, interest in the circular economy. Josep, would you like to start us off?
Yes. Sorry. Thank you very much for inviting me, Lindsay, and for organizing the event. So my name is Josep Pinyol. I worked already on sustainability research for since 2018. I started my career as a junior researcher for the Copernicus Institute of Sustainable Development in Utrecht, in the Netherlands. That's the first job I got after my master, also at the same university. And then I did my PhD at the University of Exeter. I also worked as a guest researcher for the Post-Growth Innovation Lab, and both my PhD and my job as a guest researcher were about working on the circular economy and understanding circular economy policies in the European Union, what they do, what kind of understanding they build on the circular economy. And finally, when I finished with that job, I decided to jump into consultancy, which it's a thing that I've done very recently. Just as a warning to everybody that is listening, I'm not representing Ramboll or anybody. Now I'm coming as a researcher and also to talk about my insights on circular economy. But yeah, I work here as a researcher in Brussels, and I'm specialized in circular economy and policy analysis, which is what I do. It's another kind of research. Thanks.
Fantastic, thank you. Can't wait to hear your input in terms of circular-economy and policy as we go through the discussion. Liz, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself next?
Yes, so hello everyone, happy to be with you. Here, I'm originally from Colombia. I have an undergraduate degree in Finance and International Development. Then I did a graduate degree at Harvard University. And I am currently pursuing my PhD at Utrecht University in the Copernicus Institute of Sustainable Development. So, Joseph, we have not met, but there are some connections there. I've worked in the industry in textiles for about 15 years, as Lindsay mentioned before. And I guess my interest in circularity really was into really trying to see a different model that the current model that is applied in the apparel value chain. And after directing an organization for almost 15 years, I really wanted to dive deeper into how does the model work, and how can we make sure that the circularity, if it's the model that is going to be moving forward, or if it's this paradigm shift that is also going to be transformative for people as well. And that's kind of the motivation that led me to start my PhD, and I'm in my last year of my PhD.
Fantastic, thank you. Again, it would be so great to hear your input in terms of what the circular economy means for people as well as for environment. Christina, would you like to tell us about yourself?
Thanks for inviting me, for the opportunity to be here with you. And my name is Cristina. I come from Brazil. I started working with sustainable development topics a bit more than 24 years ago. And from Brazil, working with different topics on social and environmental aspects, and working a lot with companies and NGOs and different topics, mostly around sustainable production and sustainable supply chains. And more recently, around 8 years ago, I jumped then also into the circular economy topic, first from Brazil, and in the last 7 years then working here in Germany at the CSCP, where I also take part in different implementation projects that along our conversation I can give some examples of our projects as well. I also represent Brazil since 2019 in the ISO technical committee that is writing the Circular Economy Standards series, where we are at the moment a group of 78 countries, a very big multi-stakeholder international group discussing and elaborating around the topic of circular economy to understand how to put circular economy in practice at local and also at global level. That's it. Thanks.
Fantastic, thank you. And again, we're looking forward to hearing about all of your projects throughout the discussion this evening. Thank you again to all three of you for being here. Okay, so we're going to start with some broad questions around what we mean by the circular economy, how we might define it, your experiences of circular economy in terms of each of your subject areas, each of your experiences. So we're going to start with a few questions that I would like to put out to all three of you, really. First of all, if we think about defining the circular economy, it's quite a complex task, and even in the literature, which is really growing, it's often contested what we mean by circular economy. So how would each of you explain what is meant to circular economy to a non-specialist? Would anyone like to start? Is, yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, I can give it a try because, yeah, as you said, this is something that it's always a bit of an issue, the different interpretation. But when I say, for me, the simplest way to explain what circularity and circular economy means is really, it's about reducing the input of material and reducing the output of waste. Through the creation of different circular strategies or different strategies that are hierarchical. So we will want to first reduce, then reuse, then repair, then remanufacture, and then finally recycle. I think that is the common understanding for me. An element that is critical on it is that, you know, we cannot forget that all of these strategies happening with labor and with hands behind, and so even though the definition of circular economy per se is not embedded in the social component, is not so embedded, I always add this component that is really, we're talking about people behind these strategies, and that the conditions in which these people work should be defined as good conditions too.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something that we'll come on to talk about a bit more later in the discussion. But noted that some of the words that we had in the word cloud earlier, so the idea of reduction is something that everyone in the audience also pointed out as well. So it's good to hear that coming out in your definition. Christina?
Yes, I can come next and say, I would explain that circular economy would be to use things or the same things for as long as possible, with less new materials as possible, generating less waste as possible, and contributing to sustainable development, as just said. I like to see circularity as a mean and not as a goal in itself. So if the circular solution doesn't contribute to social benefits or to environmental benefits, it makes no sense to become circular. In some cases, the linear solution may be better than the circular. So if the circularity brings better well-being and better environmental impacts, so let's go circular if it contributes to sustainability. This would be my view.
I think already we're picking up on a lot of the nuances around the circular economy debate. Joseph? Would you like to add?
Thank you for your insights, Liz and Christina. It's difficult to add up on your definitions because I think they are pretty well done. But in broad terms, you need to understand about these kind of concepts that work as buzzwords, and what happens to the circular economy happens to sustainability, happens to what it means to be green, what happens to transitions. Is that there's no such thing as police keeping conceptual frameworks as they should be. So these concepts at the end act more like notions and tend to have a diversity of understandings. In the circular economy, sadly, the most lazy part of the practitioners kind of use it as a synonym of recycling. And then you have very ambitious practitioners that talk about reducing, talk about refurbishing, talk about rethinking in different ways. So we have to understand the circular economy as this notion that indeed tries to maintain resources within the economy as much as possible, tries to keep things as much as we can, but there's the theory, that's the aim that comes from academia, and then there's the practice, and we have to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that brings us on really nicely to one of the next questions that I wanted to ask, which was how discourse around circular economy has been evolving and how it's been picked up on and used differently by different stakeholders for different means, I suppose. And I wondered if any of you had noted how discourse is evolving within your own work in this area, or some of the challenges that you've noticed around that. Yes.
Yeah. In the European bubble, the circular economy took up on 2012 approximately, and in this case here it has a lot to do with the work of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and this kind of I don't know if to call it lobbies or advocacy groups, but it kind of depends. But it started on 2012, and at first it had a phase from 2012 to 2018, let's say, that was a very technocentric view in Brussels, in the European bubble. Of course, I know that there's a multiplicity of visions, but it was more technocratical at first, more techno-optimistic and technology-based. And also it was very experimental because the circular economy was a new hype, was a new thing, but it was also very unpractical. The second phase from 2018, after the approval of the first circular economy legislative package, at least the first successful one, and especially after 2020, it's still not a policy success. We are far from being circular, but there's this aim to make circular economy mainstream objective. So it is spreading in policy objectives, and you see it more often throughout all the work that the European Commission does, but also what people try to do to implement, to get fundings, and it is getting into the political machine of here. So this is the stage here.
And Christina, I could see you kind of nodding along there. Do you recognize some of these changes in your own work?
Yes, I agree with Joseph when he says that we are far from being circular, because we have pieces of circularity here and there in one sector, in one region, in one product, but we are really far from becoming independent of raw materials or really a circular society, because the circular economy should be part of a circular society. In the ISO group, we discussed what is our vision for the circular economy, and we are really very far from this. And what I see when you pose this question is that in our projects, we see the concept of circular economy being applied, if I may add to what Joseph said, that it's applied in different levels. So we discuss circular products, we discuss circular business models, we discuss circular value chains, we discuss circular sectors, we discuss circular cities. We have even projects about helping countries to develop their circular economy strategies. So, and we have also projects helping consumers to have circular behaviors, or citizens also. So we have all these individual, organizational, or network levels to discuss circular economy. And we need all of them if we want really to become a circular environment, society, or how do we want to call this?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to share with you, and let's see if it works. just an image that I share in my presentation, because this is normally this is what the definition when I ask Google of visions of 2050 circular economy, and this is the kind of visions that Google gives. I should ask ChatGPT. But what do you think is missing on this picture?
Is this a question to the
to everyone? Or
to everyone?
And I cannot see the chat, so if anybody wants to answer, what do you see that is missing there?
May I?
Sorry?
May I give a try?
Sure.
People.
Thank you, Christina. And it is incredible, even though, I entered into studying circular economy about 10 years ago, and really the notion has always been technocratic, and the notion still of the visions of the future that we want, that we see of circular economy, are still very much based on the technological aspect, and maybe we see a little bit of green here and there, which means some kind of care for the environment, but the lacking of the social perspective is striking, and what is worrisome is that circular economy is becoming this compass guiding, as Christina was saying, sectoral plans and national plans for a sustainable ambition of 2050. But if we are not having that social element balancing on this, we wonder how of a transformative paradigm this will become. So I do see, however, in literature and in the academic world, a lot more interest in the, what would you say, in especially in the social aspects. But I would say that the mainstream still very much concentrated into that technological vision of circularity.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very striking to see those images that look very almost sci-fi in the view of circular economy, and it sort of reminds me of what Josep was saying earlier. You have to almost think about the academic discourse and the popular discourse around circular economy and how it's being understood outside of the academy, which leads on to another question that I would like to put to each of you. Related to our previous session that we had last month about greenwashing. So in my own research, I've noticed that circularity and circular economy is becoming more widely used and adopted. And sometimes I look at it and think, that's interesting use of the word circular there. Is this something that any of you have come across yourselves, either in your research or just something that you come across day to day, kind of misleading or unusual uses of the term? And what would you recommend that the audience watch out for if they want to take a bit more of a critical view of how this term is understood?
I can speak a little bit based on my research, actually focusing, assessing and improving the social impact of circular economy in the textile and apparel value chain. And I do an analysis, it's a comparative analysis between the Netherlands, Spain and India, because they play a role in the apparel value chain. And what we do is that we have worked with a number of, in my last paper, we've been working with a number of companies. And one thing that has become, and these are companies that are implementing circularity. So these are not companies that are starting to think, these are pioneers or moving forward. And what becomes very striking is that the ambition for circularity in the mind of businesses is high, but the level of understanding of the complexity of circularity is not. We are not there yet, So currently, what we see happening is that circularity is being applied a little bit like a bit of a patchwork, So like this is not working, then we put a strategy here, when we put another strategy here. But the holistic component of circularity, that is the system element of circularity, is very, very much lacking in the understanding of businesses, and therefore in the implementation of it happens. So it really happened as a very isolated efforts that do not connect and that do not end up working, because they just fix very short-term components. So I think that there in the business world that there's still a lot of lack of a clarity of what does it mean and how does it operate, on that level. And I don't necessarily work directly with the consumers, but maybe Christina or Joseph, you have also experience on that side. I could talk on my own consumer experience about it, but my research focused more on the production side of it.
Christina, what has your experience been with consumers and that understanding of circularity?
I think Joseph wanted to build up on this.
No,
please go ahead.
Well, just wanted to explain a story which I find is not as much as an anecdote, but have you heard about the concept of programmed obsolescence, I guess, right? I mean, probably you because you're experts, but also the public, I expect them to be familiar with it. But I don't know if you do remember how the notion of programmed obsolescence used to be seen in the past, because the idea of programmed obsolescence at the beginning started a bit of people having their observations, just customers. And at the beginning, it started as being just like that, people observing that their appliances used to last less, which is very visible. And eventually it was perceived as a conspiracy theory that companies, of course, they would never do that, and they were categorically denying that they were doing such practices. So as a result of this, that's actually one of the good things that the circular economy policies in Europe did, is that in 2015, the Commission published their intention to put some research and to track the possible existence of programmed obsolescence practices to see whether this was happening or not. And if you just Google Apple fines from the European Commission, you will find them, because they did realize them, they did notice them, and of course they were penalizing how Apple was slowing down their own devices. And Apple is one example of these companies that if you go to their website, they tell you that they are one of the most sustainable phone companies that they exist. And I mean, they kind of are sustainable, because if you compare the other companies, they can be quite horrible in terms of trying to repair your phone. The only phone that I could repair that I own was the Fairphone, which is super expensive. But that's an exception, and it's a very small player in the phone market. So you cannot say that Apple is a bad practitioner with it compared to its competitors, but it was doing these practices on purpose. So is there, I mean, I'm not saying this, the judges in Germany, in Spain, interpreting EU law say that. So yes, there is a lot of greenwashing.
Yeah, that's such a great example as well. And it's something that hopefully we'll go on to discuss a bit in a moment. As if Christina, did you want to add anything before we move on?
Yes, I think what is important to say about greenwashing related to circular economy or to sustainability strategies is that the action has to be where the impact is. So there are many actions that are done where it's easy to do, but not where it has to be done. So we have, I can give examples in Brazil, from oil and gas companies destroying the environment and doing cultural projects, social projects. So it's not there, the impact. It's very nice to have social projects, but they have to deal with the impact they are creating. So you need to tackle with the impacts that are coming from your business, so that it's not greenwashing. So prioritizing where your business is creating impact, this is what will avoid greenwashing. So this is what has to happen with any kind of solution for sustainability, including circular solutions. Another point I would like to say about circularity is that we have to be very careful to think on recycling equals circularity, because the researchers can probably say much better with more arguments than I can that most of the solutions or problems at product level come from the design phase. So recycling is too late. So we have to consume less, we have to design differently. And we see at the CICP numbers from the Commission saying that 80% of the solutions come at the design phase. So recycling can even give us a wrong message saying I'm allowed to consume because it will anyhow be recycled. So this is a bit the feeling I also as citizen have in Germany, because it's the land of the recycling. So we allow it to consume because recycling is so advanced. So it's not the case. This is how I see this.
And if I might add something to that, just to complete. So for the consumers and citizens out there, I think that, as Christina said, it is not recycling, and like I think that we should focus into like the waste hierarchy, right? You know, so like really when we're gonna go shopping, just like think of that, you know, like that hierarchy: the reduce, the reuse, the repair, the remanufacture, and then really the recycle. And I think that that really should be incorporated in the way that we go shopping, really, and then it will help us to kind of get into that habit too.
And when I before the ISO group for circular economy, I was also part in the ISO group for sustainable procurement, and we always made the joke that the more sustainable acquisition you may do is the one that you don't do if you don't need. So this is also for us as consumers. It's more sustainable not to consume if you don't need. This is the hierarchy number 0, where we start.
Yeah, if I may add, now I'm going to start being radical, but one of the problems when we put all the responsibility to consumers, there are two problems. First, you cannot expect everybody to be experts of circular economy and everybody to have a PhD or high qualifications on it, of course. If we are to live in a sustainable economy, whether it's circular or not, it's because it's the rule, and it's because it is a normal way to do things. And if greenwashing exists as a practice, it's because companies realize that it's very easy to fool people, and it's also the wrong approach for people who advocate for environmental action and a sustainable planet. Companies, being sustainable we cannot allow this to be a choice. That has to be a rule, and up to a certain extent, people and companies shouldn't be getting away of it, but greenwashing exists because we are promoting these consumer-based solutions and these market-based solutions. And in this sense, I think at a certain moment, we will have to talk beyond about not greenwashing, but also about legal enforcement and having strong policy action to make such transitions to happen. And we need stronger tools than that.
Yeah.
Go first, you go Liz.
No, but I also don't want to jeopardize. I know that Lindsay have other questions.
Oh, no, please.
No, because I think this is very critical. What Joseph, you're saying in terms of it is not about bringing some sort of guilt to consumers, and I think that is really the wrong approach. I think it is a systemic problem, but also, and that's it's linked a little bit what the previous question is like. Circularity is not about creating more green products; it's about creating less products. Yeah, and with more gain if you want, but and less materials, but that notion is not there. So we still have like these like really very classical economies that we need to grow what we need to grow, and we're using circular economy as a green growth strategy where we want to see, and for be it transformational, it has to be that we need to change that paradigm as well. The base paradigm of where circularity is based need to be also shifted. Otherwise, we're not going to, it is not going to be that transformation that we need.
The circularity can't be an excuse to continue growing without limits. No? But I agree with Joseph that we can't put the responsibility on the consumer side, because we have shared responsibilities along the whole value chain. So it's not only the consumer, it's not only the policymakers, it's not only the industry. Each of us has your own area of influence where you are responsible for your actions. So it's really a shared responsibility, a shared challenge.
Absolutely. I think something that's coming across from all of your responses, and it's such great to hear that discussion kind of flowing, is that although there's more awareness of circularity, there's not necessarily a very good understanding or very cohesive understanding of what that actually means in practice, and then often it's kind of used as an excuse to sell products or to buy products or to consume. And at this point, I think we had a poll. If Clarice, if you have it to share, we would like to ask the audience, have you ever purchased something because it's been labelled as circular?
Just a reminder also for people who just joined in, I put a bit earlier in the chat the link and the code for to join the Mentimeter poll.
We have one yes so far. Let's see if anyone else is able to respond. When we think of, in terms of the discussion that we just had about how much circularity is being used to sell products or to promote the right type of products to buy, perhaps, you should buy this instead, and also putting the onus on the consumer as well.
I see a comment here in the chat from Nazira that she has never seen a circular label, and I think I also have never seen a circular label.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think that you see a little bit more the sustainability,
Yes.
but as circular. There are some here in the Netherlands where I will say that there are definitely some companies that really promote themselves on with that circularity as part of their branding.
But for a circular product label.
Yeah, I think in my experience, I've seen it more in sort of overall branding of a company rather than labelled on specific products. But I've certainly seen companies that promote themselves as being circular. It's interesting to see if anyone from the audience has found that to be a reason why they might buy something or buy one thing over another. Okay, well, maybe we'll leave the Menti open. Maybe we'll get some more responses. And that leads on to the next topic that I wanted to bring up, which we've kind of broached already, but this idea of circular economy is championed as a more sustainable approach, as a means to reduce resource use. But when we think about how it's applied, there's a question as to how far it can really go in challenging overproduction and consumption, which really is causing all the negative impacts that we are seeing. Christina, in your work with consumers, what have been some of the challenges when it comes to addressing value change over consumption?
Yes, so first I want to emphasize what we said. So it's not fair to blame on us as consumers only. So the overproduction, the overconsumption is a way more complex story. And it would be easy if the problem would be only on the consumer side. But to change consumption patterns. So we have one area at the CICP. So I had the department that looks more into the production side, but we have one specific department on sustainable lifestyles and behavior change that looks specifically on consumer behavior and behavior change models. So, and I also talked a bit with my colleagues to be able to bring you some insights and what are the findings in most of the projects that can be about food waste, about mobility, about textile consumption. It comes always to the resistance to change that we all have. So we have our values, we have our behaviors that are established based on our habits, on our culture. And this is very difficult to change and also because of our individual thinking. We think on the benefit we get from our decision. At least in the Occident, this is the way we think. Why should I stop having a good life in my apartment, in my house, in my family, to save the planet? So this is more or less the thinking that probably in other cultures is a bit different. And if you allow me to tell a quick story from Brazil, when we had the Olympic Games, some Japanese tourists, when we had the football games, some Japanese tourists started to clean the football stadium after the games, and they were really in the headlights of the news because they were cleaning a public space, because it's so unusual for Brazilian people. Why are you cleaning a public space? Because they think collectively, completely different than we in Brazil, only to give an example.
That's a great example, and also really highlights how, when we think of solutions to these issues, and they're global issues, but then not every culture, every country is going to respond differently to these issues, and we need different approaches in different contexts. Yes, so I was wondering, is that something that you've come across in policy, whether you've been able to address overproduction consumption, or whether you think policy is effectively trying to address overproduction and consumption through circularity?
Yeah, sorry. I would say that the policy approaches in Europe are very technocentric. So that means that when they apply circularity, what do they mean? A lot of times, simplifying, they just put a solar panel on the top of capitalism and they call it a day. It's very simple. So they focus a lot on recycling and trying to maintain the same practices and the same status quo, but with some small technological fix in the middle. It's not everything bad though, and I believe that especially lately, since the legislative package of 2022, there has been some small changes towards other approaches that are not necessarily technocentric. For instance, okay, that's a very practical way to visualize it for people, because you are based in London, so people from Britain. Because I did my PhD in Exeter, but I was living in Brussels. One of the things that the circular economy policies did in Europe, and they didn't do in Britain because of Brexit, are the bans on single-use plastic. So when you buy a bag of chips in Belgium, they will come with a fork that is made of wood. This cheap wood that can be discarded, that it's actually recycled or something. When I take the Eurostar and go to Britain, to Exeter, for some reason, I still get plastic forks in my chips, which is like, oh wait, am I living in the past? Because you kind of forget that those countries are getting apart from each other because of legislation. So there are things that are happening that are not huge. We are not having a revolution, but we have other bans on chemicals, and we have legal enforcements of guarantees as well. So when you buy a product that says that it has to last for 30 years, well, you don't buy products that have legal guarantees that long, but if it has to last 5 years and it lasts 4.5, you are legally protected for that. And other things, I mean, other than that, there's not a big revolution. So I would say things are happening, but in a small scale. I can put a lot of small examples like that.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, again, speaks to what's happening in different contexts, how policy might, I'm sure policy would work differently in another context. To bring in bans like this and guarantees like this would have a completely different impact in a different political system. And I suppose also builds on what Christina was highlighting, that you can't just hold the responsibility on consumers. And I suppose policy can be a way to put some accountability into businesses.
It's a complex thing, because it's a paradox. You shouldn't put responsibility on consumers. You shouldn't expect consumers to be experts on everything they do all the time. But at the same time, the existence of these policies rely on popular support, because politicians will not move themselves otherwise. I think the European institutions had done a lot of work that wouldn't have happened at state level, also because of its size. So it can legislate bans that small countries have a harder time to enforce, and that smaller countries wouldn't do by themselves, because it's a very technocratic body, the European Union, and that has some advantages as well. But I mean, by banning plastic forks, you are not just becoming sustainable. But I mean, there's an attempt for doing these changes, and there's not a lot of success. So one thing I forgot to mention before, I saw the data actually very recently, because we are working on a similar project on waste, and the problem, the European Union used 10% of the materials used on the European Union in 2010 were 10.9%. 10.9% of all the materials used by the industry and materials made to make products were recycled. After 10 years of legislation, it's 11.9%, which, if you look at the graph, is like this, nothing has changed. And that's the danger. I mean, also policies are happening, but it's not just about having the will. It will not be enough. But I mean, how to do it, it's a broader question that it's very difficult to answer.
And if I might add into that, you know, like in textiles, there's like a lot of new regulations happening, and we could say that in the sector there's a lot of ambition of making it really bring accountability for businesses as well. But one thing that we're currently working on a paper actually on that is the lack of you know, the textile and apparel value chain is a global sector, and yet the vision in Europe is very not only technocentric but also Eurocentric, and it ignores the enormous impact that it will have for workers in the global south, where most of the materials that we use for creating products come, and where most of the waste go after as textile waste goes, you know. So there are. In one side, it is really moving forward because, you know, we have regulations in place that are now required, that they are not voluntary anymore, which is great, because we need to see that accountability in business. But in the other side, we're missing like a blind spot of the context of the global context of the sector, that it also applies to other value chains, not only to textiles.
Christina?
I have to add on this because this is a very important point. I really get crazy when I hear about circular Europe. So because it's not a closed system. So Europe is not a closed system. So because you bring raw materials or products from outside and you send waste to outside Europe. So we are very far about discussing the, and you also leave social impacts outside Europe if you close the system in Europe. So it's very important what you are saying, and we have other examples like electric cars in Europe destroying the biodiversity in Chile to produce the batteries in China, for instance. Ne? And we look here as electric cars would be a sustainable solution. So only looking into Europe as a system. Ne? So it's impossible to think circularity or sustainability like this. But I had this feeling when moving to Germany that this Eurocentric view doesn't see these impacts and all what happens in the global south or outside Europe. But I think with the Green Deal now, with the European sustainability strategy, it's becoming better. So it's anyhow considering in the biodiversity strategy, in the sustainable textile strategy, sustainable chemistry strategy, it's considering a bit more what is happening outside Europe. And I wanted also to mention that we at the CSCP, we are part of the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform, that is a forum opened by the Commission to hear the stakeholders, where the policymakers want to hear us, to guide them on the policy making. And in all our public projects, we have also components where they want to hear us. They want to hear the industries. They want to hear consumers, representatives, to guide them in the policy making. So I would say the door is at least a bit open, I would say. This is my perception.
It's good to hear that there's starting to be that dialogue between practice and policy, and hopefully that's a move in the right direction.
And this is a very active platform.
Fantastic. So I'm pleased that Lisa, you mentioned the global nature of supply chains, and particularly the social impacts that are prevalent across different countries from the supply chains that you've been looking at, because I wanted to move on to ask you all a bit about the social impacts of the circular economy. So Liz, first of all, if you think in regards to the apparel value chain in particular, could you tell us a bit about what measures you would like to see for the social impacts of the circular economy in particular?
Yeah, the first paper that of my current research really was all about seeing, okay, does circularity has different problems that linear business in the textile and apparel value chain. And in that research, what we found is that circularity is behaving as linear business. So it's currently emulating the same social problems that the linear industry has. So the industry is characterized by having lower employments, highly feminized. That means that most workers are women and are employed in the lowest paying jobs or the most fragilized world. And that is a constant throughout the value chain. So in the extraction, the manufacturing, the distribution that happens sometimes here in Europe, and the recycling component. And when we're talking about the typical social impacts of the industry without circularity are, for instance, wages, really low wages, really poor working conditions, lack of collective bargaining for workers. And then we created a framework called the Social Impact Assessment for Circularity that assess both the quality of job, workers' well-being, and gender equality and inclusion. And what we found out by using this in these three countries, in the Netherlands, in Spain, and India, with different companies, is that circular companies were also performing bad in those elements. So the kind of practices that we want to see happening is well, improving how the linear system works. You know, like if we really want to see circularity moving forward, then it does need to improve incomes and in a parity way, because in every single and that was a bit of a shock for me that, for instance, the Netherlands, that is considered, or even before I moved here, as a very progressive society, that like we find these like gender income gaps for the same position, like it's quite surprising, you know, like so how can we expect that if the leaders are poorly performing, how do we ask other countries to do better? So I think the kind of social impacts that we want to see improve is salaries, is also more participation, more social dialogue, and participation of workers in the tables of negotiation, and the incorporation of workers' well-being, as well as a component of quality of job, you know. So those problems are very persistent and structural, and are not necessarily problems that are attributable only to the textile and apparel value chain. In fact, there are a bit structural in our economic system. But if we want to reduce poverty, if we want to advance society, we need to tackle them and make sure that there is a plan for addressing them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose it's disappointing, but not entirely surprising to find that circular economy is perpetuating a lot of the issues of the linear economy in terms of job roles and inequalities. But great to hear that your research is working on ways in which we can make positive steps in that direction. I wonder, Christina, is this something in your work at CSCP, in terms of your aims to ensure that circular strategies are sustainable and socially inclusive? How are you attempting to measure this in practice, and what have been some of the challenges that you've come across?
So I think the aspect that Liz brought is very important and very challenging. And at the CSCP, it's not in all projects that we manage to reach out to the beginning of the supply chains and to the workers. But all of our projects are collaborative projects. So the first C from CSCP is really in practice what we do. So we try to bring the inclusiveness in our projects through the multi-stakeholder collaboration. So, and for circular economy projects, we usually say no one will become circular alone. So no company will become circular without working together with business partners, with value chain partners, with local authorities, with consumers, with citizens, with neighbors. So circularity means also collaboration. So, and this is what we provide. In many of our projects, we approach the inclusiveness through participation and through collaboration, creating multi-stakeholder clubs, multi-stakeholder living labs, multi-stakeholder environments where we can consider the needs also from smaller companies in the value chains, from the neighborhoods. And this is one of the things that we do most in many different sectors, regions, and project settings. On the challenges, I would say that changing the mindset from linear to circular, from individual to collective, is one of the main challenges, also for ourselves, not only for we are also stakeholders in the society. And measuring, as you said, is also a big challenge. So in the ISO group, we discuss measuring circularity in 3 levels. First, to measure the processes. So if we are really reusing, refurbishing, prolonging the life, if this is really happening, these circular patterns. And then if this is the second level would be if this is really saving resources. And then the third level would be if this is really contributing to sustainability at environmental and social level. So this would need to be in the 3 levels. And since we, as we said, we are very far from getting there, the measuring is also a big challenge. And I think these are the main challenges. And also another challenge is that we still work in silos. So we don't manage to bring city level. We do a lot at city level, but still very difficult to bring all actors on the same, in harmony, in the same direction. We have bubbles working, and at a certain point they will probably meet on the flow.
Absolutely. I think that's why your point about being collaborative is so important, right? It's only by everyone working towards this.
As a citizen, for instance, if I want to recycle, if I want to refurbish, if I want to reuse, I need infrastructure, I need enablers around me where I live. I can't decide to be circular alone. No? So we need all these levels of collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joseph, in terms of policy, how do you see the social impacts represented or accounted for in policy? And do you think more could be done, or what more could be done to support positive social impacts from the circular economy?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think that the circular economy on itself, it doesn't provide a set of predetermined impacts, whether different groups will be impacted in a way or the other. It's the way how you enact the circular economy and what kind of version of it do you enact. I think that in policy, I mean, I can only talk about Europe because I haven't read as much as what other countries do, but it's the same that in the previous question. There's a reproduction of on the status quo in many senses. I believe that even in some senses, they are trying to create some things, but also there are a lot of opportunities that are being missed. Let me put you an example to make this more specific and tangible. One of the things that got announced in 2020 and in 2020 was legislation to enact the right to repair. The right to repair means that if you have an iPhone or whatever phone brand you have or a TV, and it breaks down, you can bring it to a local workshop, and some craft person, some expert will repair it next to you. So this is an opportunity, such an understanding of the circular economy where things can be repaired and the value of materials can be maintained within communities that also can create jobs, and can create jobs that are owned by local people, small and medium enterprises at the most. And what kind of version of the circular economy that you enact determines that, and determines social impact, whether people can own small workshops and repair things. And that was, I think, the expectation among many countries, to be able to create jobs, especially jobs at the lower end of people who don't have a lot of training. They are not necessarily interested in creating jobs for people who have master degrees or they went through university, but throughout all layers of society. What they did with when they legislated the right to repair is that they force some companies to at least provide pieces. For instance, the European Union started also forcing companies to provide ways that your products can be repaired. But things that they missed is anti-repair practices that have to be banned. Anti-repair practices, I mean that it's related to copyright issues or the property of things. Is are you allowed to repair your own iPhone, or is Apple only allowed to repair your own iPhone? Because that means that these companies are creating monopolies within certain products, and that's quite a bad impact, because you're just enriching big companies that are already rich, and the European Union has not managed to do that. Also, the availability of spare parts, they were able to make spare parts available in some cases, but not to make sure that those parts will be cheap and they will be repairable by any company. So that means that even though you have the right to repair things, repairing things cannot necessarily be cheaper than buying new things. So yeah, we have an advance. You can repair things. Congratulations. But it's not going to take up, because it's not companies that have monopoly on their products, because they only can repair their things, may decide not to make it cheap, because that way they can have a larger profit. In this sense, this is just an example, but it talks about the circular economy has potential. We could have done a lot of very interesting things. Some of these opportunities are being missed. Maybe we can make them in the future, but also we have to talk about political will. And you talked before, Cristina, about the circular economy stakeholder platform, and it's true that these kind of platforms are kind of the norm within the European Union. You have a lot of these forums. I was counting this week, not for this presentation, but for another project. But I was looking at who were the members of the Industrial Forum, which is one of these stakeholder platforms that the European Union has. And they had 2 NGOs and 20 business organizations. And this is also the practice that these people have, that sometimes these NGOs, I remember I was talking with a journalist about that, because they were witnessing these debates. They will go into this forum and they will find that there will be one person being paid to represent the interests of the industries that build sticks to hold balloons. So they would have the resources for that. Even the small sticks to hold balloons will be represented in this forum. Whereas NGOs that represent the planet, which is a bit of a big thing, wouldn't you agree? Well, there will be 2 people. And also they are very low paid. They are sometimes not interns, but they are people with a lot of willingness to do things, a lot of good faith, but with lower salaries and a lot of work to do. So overworked people. So it's a bit of a David against Goliath. And the consequence of that is that we are building a circular economy, and we are building a Europe that, as you said before, Liz, it's like a not Eurocentric. I would say it's a bunker where Europe is protecting themselves, but also these big companies are protecting themselves in a context of a future lack of materials. And as I said, it depends on the political will, but also we have to be hopeful that political wills change for the better in the future. There are European elections this year, if you are interested in participating on that. But political wills and majorities need to change. And people in power need to change. Well, that's my vision.
Yes, I think you wanted to add.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to what Joseph is saying. About all the opportunities that lay down in the policy for like the social component. I think bottom line, like the minimum that we want to make sure is that it is not only about creating jobs. I think it is about creating better jobs. That because like the linear economy has created jobs, at least in the sector, that are bad jobs. There's people working who cannot make it. And they're working. They don't make that. So we don't want to reproduce those kinds of jobs. We want to create, yes, more jobs, but ideally better jobs than the ones that the linear economy. And I think that ambition is in the policy still lacking. But I completely agree with you that there's a lot of political will that plays around with it, and that there's a lot of also lobbying that needs to be done for that sense. But I think it is important to be repeating it on a constant level because I think it needs to. I do believe that circular economy does hold the potential to be transformative if we do have all of these elements working together. It is complex, it's not easy, but we have to aim to incorporate them if we want a better outcome than the one that we have right now.
Yes, I agree. And I would like to add, so if you look into the European stakeholder platform, I put the link in the chat. You will not find so many business. It's the opposite. You will find most advocacy NGOs, most based in Brussels, really influencing policymakers. And I would say that myself and the CSCP, we are part of it, very active, and we are part of the optimist side, really trying to make a difference and believing that we will get there, and that anyhow we are in many different European projects where we have in each project 20 partners, 30 partners, and we are kind of in a network with universities, with NGOs, with companies that are really trying to change something. So in different topics, from bio-waste management to food waste, or to water treatment, or consumer engagement for lifestyle. So in different EPR for textiles. So we have different projects, and we see this network moving in an important direction, trying to make the difference.
That's great, thank you, and really nice to round up that discussion on a positive note.
I think we have this is all true. It is all happening at the same time. While we have a war here around the corner, this is all part of the reality. No?
Absolutely. I'm aware of time. I have so many more questions that I would love to ask all of you, but I think it's only fair that we go to the chat and ask you a couple of questions that have come up from the audience. So thank you to those of you that sent those in. So we have a question from Azira. They said, thank you to the panelists for the insightful discussion. I'm curious to know if there exists a globally recognized benchmark or model that countries can refer to. Do you think the European Green Deal serves this purpose? And I think that's open to anyone who would like to respond.
I'm not sure what is meant by model. If so, the Green Deal is a set of guidelines, né? So it's a strategy. If you mean a kind of framework for, I would look more into some Ellen MacArthur publications. This is where I would say we can find some models, so to say, on how to implement or how to start. Or another good reference, I would say, could be the Circular Cities Declaration report, where you can find many good examples from what cities in Europe are doing. If you want to be a bit more clear on what you mean by a model, probably we can help more.
Thank you, Christina. Yusuf, would you like to add to that?
And soon, in a few months, we will have the circular economy ISO standards also available.
Yeah, if I may jump in, if it depends whether you want to look at circularity at a supply chain level or at a macroeconomic level, or if you are looking at the conceptual level, you may find a lot of different ways how circularity is enacted. And also it depends what version of the circular economy you have. At a macro level, the European Union uses the total amount of, it has a bunch of indicators. Actually, they have an indicator framework that they develop so they could monitor the implementation or the uptake of the circular economy. And also you can look, they have data on total material use and what is the percentage of recycled material used in comparison to raw material. But that may be helpful, but also that's very contextual. What kind of thing do you want to measure?
You are on mute.
Your mic.
You're muted, Lindsay.
Sorry, Liz, did you have any other frameworks or useful models that you wanted to note in response to that question?
No, well, I think that it has been very well summarized by Christina and Joseph, because I really think it depends the level that you're looking at. You know, there's a lot of scientific work out there that you can just Google circular economy practices, and then you will get a number of approaches that you can look into it. That has been also, and that I think it's important, you know, like always try to look for scientific base. You know, there's also in the circular economy, we do find a lot of like trying to reinvent the wheel, you know, and I think that we need to try to go as much as possible to that scientific rigor to at least allow ourselves to go on that direction that has been proven somehow.
Probably it would be good to add that the Green Deal is the whole European sustainability strategy, but inside the Green Deal, there is the Circular Economy Action Plan. So it's part of the Green Deal, and there it's interesting also to see how Europe is dealing and also selecting which sectors are more has a bigger potential for circularity, so it's also interesting to take a look.
Absolutely. Thank you, all of you, for that response, and thank you, Azira, for your question. I suppose the responses speak to something that's come up continually in the discussion, the complexity of the circular economy, and you know there are models and guidelines that exist, but it's very context dependent as to which of those are useful. We have just over 5 minutes left of the session, and what we would like to do is to end with an action, challenge, or reflection point from each of you for attendees to take away with them from this discussion. So hopefully you've all kind of got something in mind that you would like the audience to take away as we finish up. I don't know if anyone would like to share theirs first. Christina?
May I?
Yes, please do.
Thanks. I would like to share my screen with you and invite you to join our PS Lifestyle test. This is one CSCP project. It's a Horizon. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, it's one project where CSCP is a partner, and we are developing a positive sustainability lifestyle test. Unfortunately, we don't have yet for the UK, but I talked to my colleagues and we are developing a pan-European version, but you can take a look here if you want to know how sustainable or is your lifestyle, or what can you change in your lifestyle. You can take a look. You can do a test. You can choose another country. For now, in a few weeks, you will have another version, and make a lifestyle test about your housing, about your mobility, about your food consumption, and create a plan to get started to become more sustainable in your lifestyle. I will put the link here in the chat.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christina. It's a really great resource to share. Liz, would you like to?
Yeah, I would say, you know, although this is not about responsibilizing consumers, as Christina also mentioned, we do have a responsibility at least to inform ourselves of how conditions and how our products are made and in what conditions and where. And I'm happy that Christina, you brought up that this idea of the public participation. There are several possibilities for citizens to also support new initiatives. There is currently a campaign from the Clean Clothes campaign that is trying to get support for fair wages in the industry, and every European can vote on that, and they need 1 million votes for it to have some sort of impact on it. So that's a very concrete, non-consumer but very activist way of making sure that we act upon. I'm going to try to find the link as well as Joseph speaks.
Yeah, that would be great if you could.
Yeah, from my end, I think it has been a very pleasant conversation, and it's nice to get insights also from people from based on other countries. I think that one of the common things that keep happening is that every time you talk about sustainability, circular economy, or any other topic, is that we always find that people coincide in the need to have a more radical change, a change in the system. And these opinions are not just within academia, which is nice that are getting also mainstream there, but also in other spheres and also in public policy. I was talking the other day with one of the main consultants from the Commission on circular economy and one of the developers of the circular economy within EU policy. And a lot of these technocratic, technocentric visions don't necessarily stem from lobbying and also bad practices. Sure, the representation of businesses have a strong influence and lobbying has a strong influence in policy making, and the strength of conservative parties, of course, because is part of the obstacle that, and also in governments of member states, is part of the obstacles to be more transformative. But even despite these obstacles, these ideas are setting foot, and there is interest and an appetite for how to make things more transformative. And the most important fear from the European institutions is not how to make how to please lobbies itself, but it's how do we make sure that the policies that we have in place don't become just paper, that the European Commission is not like a printer that brings a lot of policies, but they become nothing at the end. The fear is that, because even those technocentric policies that we criticize are hard to implement, even though they are shy themselves. And there's a shortage on ideas, or in all sides, in all levels, how to make such changes reality. So, because I know I'm using this as an opportunity, because I know that I have a lot of young audience to think about that for your future career, because at least the circular economy is not the only topic, but the presence of well-prepared professionals that help to push this transition and this sustainable development is necessary. So please go for it, and it's a job that we all have to do together. So.
Brilliant, thank you. It's really great messages to end the session on. And yeah, we've come to the end of the discussion. So all that remains is to thank all three of you so much for participating. It was really great to hear from all of you and to hear your insights on the circular economy. It's been really insightful and informative. And also to thank Clarice for your amazing work taking care of the tech behind the scenes, and the sustainability team as well for putting all this together. Clarice, any further wrapping up points before we close the meeting?
Yeah, a big thank you to you, Lindsay, but also Joseph, Liz, and Christina for sharing their insightful thoughts and work, and all of you for attending. And a few opportunities for you to get involved as we wrap up. February at King's is Climate and Sustainability Month. So instead of one seminar in February, we'll have a lot of panel events, social workshops, and much more. Check it out. As I mentioned at the start of this session, make sure you're registered for the Sustainability Seminar Series to receive all the future invites. The next session will be in March and focus on military sustainability. And don't forget to enroll on the KIT Sustainability and Climate module, for which you can give an award upon completion. You can also subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social media to make sure you don't miss out on other events that are coming up. All the links are in the chat. Finally, you can join the King's Climate Action Network to co-create the university's climate action journey and volunteer on projects around energy, schools, engagement, education, supply chain with circular economy in there, and cycling. We'll share all the links in the chat. So that's all for today. Thanks again and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Thanks for
very
the
much.
organization.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for inviting us. Bye bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.